Hey everyone, and welcome to an episode of VIVERSE Influencers. Today we have a very special guest, PapaFearGaming, which has actually multiple top YouTube channels that cover gaming, that cover VR, that cover the metaverse, the future, even Web3. Welcome. How are you today?
Yu-kai, I'm doing great. It's so good to connect again.
Yeah, I think the last time we had a chat was a year ago, and a lot of people said that was one of their favorite interviews.
That's so awesome. I really enjoyed that conversation with you two. I remember leaving, or when the call ended, I just went outside and I was just like, wow, that was really good. I had a great chat with Yu-kai. So happy to do it again.
You left a personal warm feeling in me afterwards too. And like I said earlier, my video editor thought he liked yours the most because he also had that person. You're just a personal guy, personal, friendly, uplifting, good guy to just chat about. No wonder so many people on the internet just want to watch you play games and talk about stuff, right? Because that whole concept by itself is kind of awkward. Like, why don't you just go play games? Why are you watching some guy play games and saying things? And it's just because you have a great personality that people want to watch for hours. So why don't you start off just introducing your channels, what you've done, and let people know how to find more about you.
Yeah, sure. And also that's super awesome to hear that about from your editor. But yeah, so my name's Jordan, but I've had two successful YouTube channels. My first one being The Fear Raiser, which initially started off gaming, Minecraft, kind of transitioned to animation, cartoons and stuff. But then, kind of retired from that channel back in 2018 and took a little break. And then I started a brand new channel from scratch, which is now PapaFearGaming, which is my current main channel. And what I do on PapaFearGaming is I basically explore filmmaking and content creation within the metaverse, technically. So, my videos kind of almost feel like cartoonish. They feel like you're watching a cartoon, but we film in VR. So it's like a really interesting dynamic of like traditional filmmaking and, virtual reality.
Yeah, I think we discussed a little bit of this last time we talked, but it begs the question, why have a whole new channel? Why not just pivot the last one where you already have the audience? And what's the innovation on this one compared to the last one?
Well, I think back then I had felt like I didn't really understand branding. I didn't really understand YouTube or like how to maintain or build or branch out from an audience. And back then, I just kind of decided it was just better to just step away from it because, quite frankly, I was going through a lot back then, and I sort of just didn't have the know-how to, continue. So, kind of taking a step back, I actually learned a lot about myself. I learned a lot about, how a brand that you build that becomes successful, but let's just say inevitably dies, doesn't make your worth any less. And I think that a lot of people struggle with that concept because I think a lot of people attach their worth to their success. And I was really thankful actually when I stepped away from the channel and it basically died. It was kind of like that realization that, there's so much more to explore out in the world, and it's just all about getting over yourself. It's not about the numbers. It's about what you want to do for the world, which was kind of why, I just had this revelation. And of course, during the pandemic and everything was when I actually got my VR, HTC Vive, actually, the very first one.
Wow.
And I was like, wow, VR is really cool. I really like this. And, I'd go on YouTube and there's not a lot of VR videos. So I kind of was like, just reignited my inspiration to create videos again, and it inevitably became what it is today.
Yeah, and it's you touch on some really important topics like branding, which we're going to talk about in terms of VIVERSE is HTC's version of branding their metaverse, right? Because there are other companies also saying they do the metaverse, but Vive has their own angle, and we want to make sure it's branded well. You mentioned about self-worth, right? And also, I think one of the things VIVERSE wants to do is to improve people's mental, emotional health through the VIVERSE and through VR. And I know when Vive actually launched some of its products, the Vive Flow, and it talked about, hey, we want to use VR to improve mental health. A lot of people were actually pretty upset. It's like, hey, we just want gaming. Like, no one cares about mental health or, emotional health. And, why are you doing this? And, and this is where I think Vive wants to position itself. Vive was one of the first, as you mentioned, to go really serious on VR gaming, right? When it was not obvious. And then later other players came in, and then Vive became one of the first companies that seriously did VR for business, right? And then now Vive wants to be the first, one of the first to be seriously considered, I think the first actually, to just consider things like emotional mental health and all those things, because these are all the things we believe VR can help with, AR can help with, a good metaverse should be able to help with, because especially with the digital world, people's self-worth, self-identity is in flux, right? They have to re-explore who they are and what they're worth. Before, you're in real world, you just walk around, you have different ways to validate your self-worth. And then it became how many followers you have, how many likes you have, and all that stuff. And so there needs to be a new digital way to manage how people feel about themselves. What do you think?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that, it's really weird to say this, but I really feel like the pandemic made us all realize how, being separated from each other, we need to be more connected than ever, especially during hard times like what we all just went through. And I think that VR really highlights the way that we can connect even further on an already globalized world. I mean, right now, technically, we're almost kind of in a virtual, we're in a virtual space right now, chatting on webcams, which is almost in a sense a type of metaverse. But I mean, to go in VR itself and to almost feel as if you were there in the presence of each other, I think profound technology. And I think it's incredible to be living in a time where we are in the beginning of that, which I think is really cool. And I think it's going to really, I think it's going to really help people connect more, especially around the world.
Yeah. And, this is through video because we want to put this on YouTube, but the VIVERSE also has virtual meetings, virtual collaboration, exploring a museum together. So I think in the future, that's what people could do. And we could probably hang out in Vive Sync or whatnot. There's a lot of little mechanics, like if you shake hands or do a high five, the little sparks and special effects. I think the direction of VR is more and more what we call empathetic VR. So, HTC Vive also launched the facial tracker. So you start to be able to see people's facial expressions. I think the world isn't fully prepared yet for that, but I think at one point in VR, if you can see things like admiration, right? You're sitting next to, let's say, your significant other, and you're both watching a video, and you turn around, you look at her, and she's like wow by that movie, and you're like, I'm so happy being here with her, right? If you can do that in VR, I think that empathy can be translated with facial expressions. I think that's when we're fully ready to really have even tighter bonds in the metaverse and in VR.
I couldn't agree more, man. I think it's really cool what HTC Vive wants to do. The Viveverse. I love the concept. I love the genuine human connection that they strive for. And especially as somebody who's been through a long distance relationship, I wish back then I had a way to I guess connect on through technology off the phone, right? I wish I had that back then. But obviously I think it's going to be really great for people who, find love on the internet, or maybe have to move from each other and can still stay in touch and, and have all those human qualities.
Yeah. So why don't you tell me about your take of the metaverse?
The idea of the metaverse is really cool. I think so many people think it's not coming anytime soon, but I disagree. I think maybe in the next 10, 15 years, I think that the metaverse is going to just be I really think just how the internet changed our lives. I think that this is the next phase, the whole idea of blockchain, NFTs, and then going into the metaverse. I think this is just going to be like a new universe for us to explore. It's going to be valuable. We're all going to have our own identities, our own avatars, and social gatherings and such. And I personally think that the metaverse is going to be revolutionary. And I also think too, I want to add, a lot of people now, like I was saying earlier, think the metaverse is kind of, they think it's dumb. And I'm like, listen, you know, how many kids are growing up right now on the internet all the time, or on devices all the time? They are already online always.
Mhm.
And the metaverse isn't for the older people now, it's for the new generation. We're building the railway for the future of generations to come. So I think it's all about perspective and realizing how good this will be for the future.
Yeah, I think you have a good analogy with the internet, right? So in the early days, the internet was not this cool, sexy thing. It was actually what people thought, oh, just for geeks, right? For nerds who like command line codes and doing stuff with HTML. And they're like, why don't you go do like actual important stuff? And then you start hearing like stories like, oh, this guy, stayed in his apartment for a week and he only like ordered food and stuff on the internet. It's like, wow, crazy. How is that even possible? And then you start seeing businesses start to say like, yeah, I see why consumers like kind of like to look at some information, like see it's like books online or something, but why would we invest there? And then now you know that when everyone's on the internet, literally everyone, right, who has the technology capacity to get there are on the internet. They're there, and so all the business have to be there, right?
Mhm.
So it's like, oh, why should we use it? So it's the same with the metaverse. I think it's a technology trend that is still maturing, and the early stage, even like 3-4 years ago, when the early budding parts of it, it's like, hey, people who like VR, who are like tech savvy, who go on these blogs or watch certain YouTube channels, they go. But we believe that in the future, just kind of like the Ready Player One, but what I'm not a big fan is how the real world is just like left there to like rot on its own, and they just spend all their time in the VR oasis. I do think there needs to be a balance, but there's that appeal, right? A world where you can be anything you want, do anything you want, and it feels like real life. It's like upgraded reality, and you get to potentially make a living in the metaverse. You get to thrive, you get to bond, you get to become healthier in the metaverse. You're physically healthier. I think that concept is attractive, and I think lots of people be there. And so, at one point, I think all the businesses want to be there too. And the key thing is now we're just shaping what the metaverse looks like, how it's done. Is it open or closed? Is it controlled by one company or a variety of companies?
I don't think the metaverse is just going to be one thing. I definitely think it's going to be many things. And I think, but like, I think what the VIVERSE is doing is they're taking a real human approach to the metaverse, which is, I haven't seen that yet. So that's really cool. I really like that too, because, there's definitely businesses out there that are just looking for the money. This is like a money grab opportunity, but I think the businesses who focus on real fundamentals and how it will benefit humans will be successful. And I think that's really cool that HTC Vive is kind of taking a first mover advantage. It's also really nice for me because, like, again, like the HTC Vive headset, that the first one I believe they ever produce is like I still use to this day. And it's just really cool to see they're evolving and taking this approach. So it's rewarding.
Yeah. And of course, we have a lot of different other headsets out. The Vive Pro 2 is strong PC VR. The Focus 3, people have said it is the best all-in-one on the market. It is positioned for business, but you can also play Steam games and whatnot. And then the Vive Flow, which is portable. So that there's a variety of ways to enjoy that ViveVerse. But what's interesting is that, because you mentioned like ViveVerse has this human focused approach, right? And we actually get a lot of criticism from that in a sense, because like I said, when the ViveVerse, we make YouTube commercials or ads or videos about mental health, people make fun of us, say, hey, why this is stupid, like why are you so tone deaf, we want games. And also, the videos we have, it's about family values, right? So the video is like, oh, I went to go to a museum with my grandmother and I actually gave her a gift of the NFT of the art she liked. I actually do more work. And as opposed to some other metaverse examples out there, it's all about popularity, right? As opposed to family values. It's about like, oh, if you're not popular, it doesn't matter. You know, one of the unique things about Vive and HTC itself is like, we don't have, right now, we don't have a advertisement model, and we definitely don't rely on it. We're really just about building good solutions, good products, and people come in. Whereas you have other places that rely on advertising as a model, which means they need to be able to track your data and serve that. So a lot of times, if you can see business decisions and product decisions made based on what the revenue model is, right? And so we believe that, you know, we don't want to eavesdrop on our customers. I think the metaverse should be open. It should be private. People should be able to do whatever they want, right? This is your online identity. And so there shouldn't be this overarching company that's eavesdrops on you. And I think whatever company you're using to visit Metaverse, they should be respecting their patrons, right? They shouldn't see their users as products to sell to advertisers. They should be seeing their customers as their patrons that they should respect. So I think that's a unique approach that VIVERSE is going for. There's a lot of things that still needs to be done to make it a full, compelling experience and make that future vision happen. But I think at the get-go, we already see the values determine product decisions, and people, you know, there are people definitely out there who don't care about privacy. Like, hey, I just want convenience. If people track me all day long, if some company can see your room through their cameras, they don't really care. But there's some people who actually do feel like, hey, I want to just be able to do things on my own without a company constantly knowing what I'm talking about. So I think those values are something that guides a lot of our decisions, which sometimes is handicapping, right? We can't do a lot of things because of the values. But there's actually a saying that strategy is not what you choose to do, but what you choose not to do. Because if you say yes to every opportunity, you have no strategy.
I like that. That's pretty good. You know, I think we're still speculating what the metaverse will be. I mean, I think a lot of people have different opinions about it, and as they should. I mean, there's the people who watch the Ready Player Ones. There's the people that have already experienced a metaverse in a sense, with just kind of socializing through VR. But I mean, like, I think that it's definitely good to maintain those values, the privacy values, especially. I think that, you know, we're living in a time where privacy is like, it feels like we're losing privacy in a lot of ways. And, you know, if we could somehow keep that integrity in the metaverse, in the Viveverse, I think that will be incredibly appealing to a lot of people. And I would like to think that would also give more natural human connection too, because you're not like worried like, oh, are they listening to our conversation right now, or you know, is there an ad gonna pop up all of a sudden, or are they, you know what I mean? Like I think it's just going to really pave the way to the future of the metaverse.
Yeah, and I think especially with this growing sense of cancel culture, it's also an issue, right? Because you know, you're just chatting with their buddies. But if you're always afraid, like, hey, 12 years later, something I said today, just a joke maybe, right? A very casual joke gets brought up, it gets recorded and brought up onto the internet saying, hey, look, this person is politically incorrect. This person should be canceled. Like, no one wants that when they're just like chatting with their friends, right? If you're making a public speech and all that stuff, sure, you need to watch what you're saying. But you're just hanging out in the metaverse and just minding your business, playing your games. And you know, you shouldn't be scared all the time that someone's watching, recording, and using it either for selling you ads or for other things that could be worse down the road. I think that is definitely not a happy future that we're all striving towards.
No, and listen, Yu-kai, you know, I'm no stranger to cancel culture. I've kind of dealt with that a few times in my career. But the truth is, you know, you've just got to keep moving forward, and you've got to realize, like, you know, it's just, unfortunately, it's human nature. There's drama everywhere, even in virtual reality. But the thing is, you've just got to stay true to yourself. As long as you kind of keep moving forward, and that's not without saying, like, the thing is, people make mistakes. And the thing about cancel culture is, it's almost like, you know, they're out for blood. There is no coming back. And I think that's wrong in a lot of sense. Now, obviously, there's some exceptions, But, you know, a lot of people make mistakes. I think that's human. And I think refusing to believe that is dangerous, and it's not good for people's mental health.
Yeah.
But
yeah, and sometimes like the times change, right? At this time, no one knows something becomes controversial. So let's say I'm gonna give a random example. Like sometimes you like buy some kind of bird egg, okay? And this bird is just normal, just buy it. And then you talk about, hey, these birds are awesome. Like I bought like 10 of them, right? And then maybe 12 years later, there's news about, oh, this bird is in danger, has been exploited. People do all these things with the bird's egg, and it's terrible, right? And so, and they go back and say, hey, look, 10 years ago, Yu-kai talked about he got these bird eggs, so he's the worst person in the world. Like I wouldn't know. Like at that point, I'm like, yeah, I would not touch these birds at all. But if you take something from 10 years prior to when I didn't really know, and I had no way of knowing, and then punish me for it, you know, it just isn't the key thing is we shouldn't be scared about something like that everywhere we go, right? You know, and we make mistakes. We're sometimes ignorant, and later on we become educated and we change how we behave. So I think that that privacy should be there, especially in a world where everyone's going to be in, right? Who you know, and when you can choose who you want to be, you also want to express it. And I think even based on what you're saying with your second YouTube channel, right? You were also following that thing about strategy. It was a lot of things you choose not to do, right? Before, maybe you chose to do everything, like whatever you feel like people wanted you to do, expect you to do, you had to do. And if you weren't doing, you felt guilty. And the second one is like, no, I'm just not going to do it, right? This is not me. This is not what I want. This is not my values. And so you don't do it. And as a result, you're happier. Is that correct?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, like again, people are scared of change, and rightfully so. It is hard. You know, it's sometimes it's a little unbelievable that I'm even sat here talking about the second win that I was given, and the opportunity to come back. Because truthfully, when my first channel died, I thought that was it. So the fact that I made it work again, after about 2.5 years, 3 years, really kind of just changed my whole perspective on success. I think anyone's capable of success. But we've got to be willing to forgive our mistakes, move past them, learn from them, and you know, and regardless of other people's opinions on you, right? And that's a hard thing to deal with. It's a hard, like it requires a lot of growth, but you know, that's where the real change comes from. And yeah.
And in your opinion, how open do you think this metaverse should be, and how, you know, if you look at the Ready Player One, Oasis, it's actually run by one company, right? And this one company founder is like, hey, I put 3 Easter eggs in this, so whoever got the Easter egg, they own the whole thing, right? Which I think in the movie was like $500 trillion or something. So Jeez. Yeah, so that is definitely not decentralized, right? And I think a big theme about people's desire is that this future metaverse is going to be open and decentralized. So what do you think, you know, how decentralized and open do you think a metaverse should be?
I definitely think there should be like public and private metaverses. And I definitely don't think that only one company or maybe a couple should have a monopoly over the space. I think that stifles innovation, which is not good. You know, when I think about the metaverse and how I feel like it should go about, I almost think about the Wreck-It Ralph 2 movie. You know, how he was it the first movie? I think it was the second movie, when he like leaves his game, then he's like in the internet and it's all connected to all the other games or whatever, and they're all like interacting, but then they can go back to their hubs or whatever. I think that's like a neat idea.
The first one, he goes to other games in that same arcade, and the second one, they go explore the internet.
Yes, yeah, I think it'd be cool if it was like the second one, because then like there's just all these different like metaverses, but then there's almost like this like hub where everyone can kind of hang out, almost like, you know, you're hanging out at the mall, right, or like a community center or something. But then you can kind of go to like different metaverses and explore and have fun.
Yeah, and this is the idea of interoperability, which is basically saying, hey, if you play some game in one game, you play some game and you in one's ecosystem, and you get a lot of cosmetics, you get these special angel wings and swords. But usually when you quit the game, it's just gone, right? It's just what, and I've had countless thousands and thousands of hours of experience where I spent labor, time, money, spreadsheets to optimize, and even sometimes money. And then when I quit the game, it's just like nothing, right? And so interoperability is that you can take those things and you can take it to another game, another ecosystem. The angel wings can actually also thrive in another world, and you can just continue forward. And that's a very appealing concept for a lot of people. So everything is interconnected, because we had virtual worlds before, right? And so just having a 3D virtual world doesn't just mean that it's a metaverse. And I think one step forward is that it's persistent virtual world. It doesn't matter if you're logged in, logged out, it keeps going, it keeps running. People are there, people are gone, but the world itself is persistent. So you have more of those going on. And then there's that potential interoperability. And I think in the future, like you said, it's not going to be one company having it. It's going to be quite a few different, and some people are using the word federations and whatnot. And so because of interoperability, and this is, we might explore a little bit of blockchain technology, the technology allows you to take one thing to go from one place to another, but then based on the actual quote unquote, let's say because some people say there's a lot of metaverses, but I feel like the terminology should be, there's one metaverse, and then there are different federations or kingdoms in that metaverse, because it feels like it's weird when it's just metaverses. Different places set the rules. So this company could say, hey, we have a closed metaverse. So if you come in, it's like passports almost. These items are allowed to come in, these items are not allowed. These you have to pay a fee, and you have to agree with us tracking your data. And the other ones are just open and decentralized. Hey, bring whatever, do whatever, just be free. And so whereas before it was impossible to bring things to another ecosystem, now it is possible through blockchain technology, right? And even though right now, if you're on a different chain, like if you're Ethereum versus Solana, you can't really talk to each other. There are people making things that bridge them and all those things. So I think that's going to be the future in terms of technologically it's possible, interoperability, and it's just whether the people building that kingdom, what rules do they allow for this interoperability to happen?
Absolutely, man. I mean, like when I think of the metaverse, I think it's like the next level up from the internet. Just like how the internet is not one thing; it's just this huge universe, this digital universe, and the metaverse is kind of like the next level of that. But the whole idea of like different kingdoms and stuff, I think that's really cool. I think about like the console wars, and how that was always a thing. But then, they started overlapping kind of like the online play. You could like play different consoles, but still be, going against each other. And I mean, growing up in a time where that wasn't ever, I never thought that was possible. It was like, wow, that's really cool. So, I mean, the whole idea of like different metaverse kingdoms, connecting with each other, being interoperable. I think that's really interesting. And I also think it's a cool thought, because like the private metaverses, let's say, maybe could have a change of heart and switch to interoper. That's a big word. Like interoperating. I don't know if
Interoperability.
Interoperability. I'm just gonna say connect.
Sure. Interconnecting.
Interconnecting with each other, which could have a huge market appeal too, especially if it was, say, like a really popular game, and then they're like, hey, we're gonna connect to the big metaverse over here, and now you can bring all your NFTs in there and interact with all them, and yeah, I think it'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, like these days when I play After the Fall, one of my recent favorite games on Viveport with my Vive device. I actually use the Focus 3 to play it. In the game, you'll see that people have icons on their heads, like, oh, this person uses a Steam, this person is Question. You see PlayStation, like, oh, this is a PlayStation player. I'm using my VR headset to play with someone on a PlayStation console, right? That's pretty amazing. And it's kind of funny because when people see the Quest 2 players, you know, they're the most casual like VR players. Like, oh, this person may or may not be like so committed into being good at this game. But it's so interesting how you can see, and people see like, oh, hey, you have that triangle. Oh, that's a Vive. That's so cool. And so you chat with people, right? And that obviously the chatting is the default, and then the voice communication, and then you get talk about it, you get to make friends and build bonds with people on a different ecosystem, different platforms. And so that you see is the first step of having different things come together. And you know what's something that we probably don't appreciate enough, like no one appreciates this enough, because you keep going back to the creation of the internet, right? I believe the creation of the internet was inevitable, but whether it is owned by a single company or not was not inevitable, right? It could be like one company developed and said, it's only our company that owns the internet. Anyone who wants to use the internet has to be a customer and pay us, right? Or it could just be for government use, that's it. And we were just lucky, as far as my random research went, is that the people who create the internet, like, this is so good, it should not be owned and privatized. It should be a public domain thing. Everyone should be able to take advantage of the internet. And therefore we have the world we live in today. And I don't think we appreciate enough how the internet is not just owned and run by a single company.
Yeah, we definitely don't. I mean, you know, I think a lot of people these days take what they have for granted, you know, and I'm guilty, you know, but I do think that decentralization of the internet was a fundamental reason for its success. I think that if one company owned the internet, I think it would inevitably just become corrupt. There'd be a monopoly. You know, just wouldn't be what it is today. And I think the internet really created just this universe of knowledge and experience, and, you know, and data, and you know, and of course there's also misinformation out there, and you know, we can't discount the fact that there's also bad qualities too, but you know, that is just the reality of the world and the universe we live in.
And that may not be better if it's just owned by one company either.
Absolutely. And it stifles innovation, you know, like,
and instead of just false information from random people out there, it's just all false information from one company that wants to brainwash you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And it's actually interesting because people were saying, well, you know, obviously the decentralization is a new thing. The internet back then is not decentralized, but the early days, internet literally is just a lot of people having servers in their homes and places, and each server is their own website. So in a sense, it is decentralized, and it's only over time, you know, they wanted more efficiency with scalability, and so the centralization. A lot of websites are now hosted on, let's say, the Amazon servers, right? And all the so you sometimes see when one server crashes, the whole, like a bunch of hundreds of websites all crash that seem to be unrelated. So at the beginning of the internet, it was actually more decentralized, and then to achieve better efficiency, and companies wanted to grow, right? Companies wanted to gain more and more influence and power. It became more and more centralized over time, and you know, I think because this is important, and now we're dealing with problems with quote unquote tech giants having too much power. So I wonder if the metaverse, we'd see something similar where early on it's decentralized, and you know, because this whole thing is like snowball effect. You know, when you get power, you get more power, and you can crowd out your competitors. And over time, maybe it will still get more and more centralized. And the question is, how can we prevent that from happening? I don't have the answer. Maybe it's inevitable. Maybe there's things that enough people can stand up to do. I mean, VIVERSE obviously trying as hard as we can to say, hey, at least there's an alternative metaverse experience. And I don't think we aim to be the dominating one. I think we aim to be the one that has certain characteristics and values. And so we attract people who believe in those to come. But, you know, I think it's going to be, who knows, 5-10 years from now, what's the landscape going to be like?
Yeah, I mean, I think competition is healthy. And I think, you know, again, it kind of goes with innovation. I think as long as we don't let giant tech companies rule over the metaverse too, I think that we should be good. We should be okay. And I think that the best approach is something like what the VIVERSE is doing. I think that, you know, again, this human need approach is highly attractive. and I think desperately needed. I think that phones and social media have really disconnected us. But my time in virtual reality has shown me like there's true connection and meaningful connection with people in virtual reality, and I think that's incredible. Again, like it was so incredible that I decided to start a new channel.
Everyone should check out PapaFearGaming VR on YouTube if you're not already. And let's talk about the blockchain and Web3 and NFTs. As you know, what's interesting is that NFTs to a lot of the gamer markets and VR folks, they really have this negative sentiment towards NFTs. Why do you think that is?
Well, I don't blame them. I think there are a lot of scams in the NFT world, like, people selling JPEGs and monkeys, but people don't realize the fundamentals behind this technology. And it's just a testament to how early we are. I would tweet about how pro NFT I am on Twitter, and I'd get all this hate. And I'm like, okay, well, you're the weird one. You're the weird one to me. Like, this is the future. But I just don't think people understand the concept of blockchain yet. I don't think people understand, how it gives people ownership of digital assets. I listen to a lot of people who are like exploring the space, and someone like Gary Vaynerchuk always talks about like, oh, you don't want to, you don't like the idea of buying an NFT, but yet you want the blue check mark on Twitter. Or you want 100,000 or 1 million followers on YouTube or on TikTok. It's like, but that's just on the screen. That's not even real, right? Well, it's like, NFTs and blockchain actually give you ownership over, whatever assets you purchase, and you can resell them or use them in the metaverse, or so many other things. I just think we're still just super early. And I do think there's a lot of scams in NFTs. Don't get me wrong, but there's that 1%, that 1% of the NFTs that are out or coming will be revolutionary.
Yeah, and a lot of things I talk about is that, because there's so much money in it, and because there's a lot of money going around, there's all this greed factor. And it's like let's keep going back to the early internet, where people are still developing and building it out, making it more and more mature. But suddenly, let's say the early internet, there's all this money. People say, oh, wow, they went on this website and they suddenly became rich, right? Now you have all the people who go there just to try to get rich, either both from a scammer side and also from the victim side. The greed comes from both sides, and it will totally like mess up the whole landscape. But the technology is strong. And one thing I bring up a lot is when you look at the .com bubble burst of 2001, .com did not fail. The technology was useful and valuable. We know that today, some of the most valuable assets in the world are .coms. It was the financing, exuberance that was a bubble and burst. People realized, hey, this website isn't worth $10 billion. It's only worth $100 million. And everyone sells, and then people lose their money. So maybe they oversell, the company goes down, and it's like, oh, look, that company was a scam to begin with. But it was already amazing that a website is worth $100 million, right? But it's just people somehow saying, oh, it's worth 10 billion. Like, let's go to the moon. Yeah. And you buy it because you want to sell to another person for higher. So you keep hyping it up. And so when I explain to people the core value of an NFT, one example I give a lot is, I'm a published author, and I've sold around 100,000 copies of my book, right? And the book itself,
that's awesome.
Oh, thank you. And so it's about gamification. So, So the book is fungible, right? So people just want the text, the knowledge. And if they trade with each other, it doesn't matter. The ebook's just as good. The audiobook's just as good. But in my lifetime, I believe I signed about 200 to 300 copies of my book. And that becomes non-fungible. It's a unique version of it in the world. And even if people trade signed books, they're different, right? I wrote different things, a little bit different handwriting. And that creates a more meaningful relationship to what they own because it's signed. So I think people understand these kind of principles. But now we take it to the digital world, right? Now there's a digital signature that's a unique certificate, and it's not just like you can replicate it infinitely. This one is special. And because of that, it's more valuable. People who hold it want to hold on for longer. They don't want to lose it. And if they one day want to part with it, it should be worth something to other people. So I think in terms of NFTs, it's really the technology that makes this possible to have a deeper relationship with the artist you like, with a musician you like. You play a game and you spend 1,000 hours, right, playing this game, and then finally, or even 10,000 hours getting this item, right? And you want this item to go out there and be 10,000 hours worth of labor for other people. So anyone else who doesn't want to spend 10,000 hours to get this, they would pay you 10,000 hours worth of labor for this item. So it's respecting the time you spend in it. Now, if you can just go out and say, hey, you can replicate this infinitely, it has no value, right? Why would people want to pay anything? You just copy and paste. So I think those are all the things that NFT provides to a better future. And in the metaverse, it's not just a VR immersive experience. I think that's just the experience, but the NFT side is about the ownership, the value that flows within the metaverse.
Yeah, I mean, scarcity matters to people. And I think that blockchain technology and NFTs are really kind of giving a new way to invest in people and in projects and artists, which is incredible. Like I always like to think back to back in my WoW days. I used to play a lot of WoW, and you grind for days to get like mounts or whatever items. Yep. And those were valuable to you, and they were valuable to people in the game. But you couldn't really get anything out of it outside of the game. And I think blockchain, NFTs and all that are going to change that. So like you can literally step out of the game, sell this thing. It actually has real value. And let's just say, for example, the whole idea of investing in, say, creators. I've heard about this concept about how, or artists, whatever, as the artist grows, they offer NFTs. People want to support the artist, right? Nothing wrong with supporting the artist. And let's just say, I'll give an example. So, I once upon a time I had these plushies, right? And I don't make them anymore. We don't make them anymore. But imagine, let's say a year ago, I'm like, hey, buy this plushie and you'll get an NFT, and there's a 1 in like 10 chance you get a rare one. And let's just say the value of it matters. Now, let's then say in like 5 years, I have 10 million subscribers. Let's just say that's not going to happen, or who knows? But now the value of those NFTs that you got from supporting me early on might be worth way more money now. And, people from my fan base, let's say, would pay good money for those NFTs, because let's then say that those NFTs offer more than just something to resell, but let's just say it offers like benefits, like going to conventions or all this other stuff. Like I seen an NFT project that's allowing people to fly in private jets just by owning one of their NFTs. You know what I mean? Like it's just like crazy stuff. But again, I think it's just a really big, complicated topic. And I think anyone who thinks NFTs are all dumb and a scam should sit down and educate themselves for like a couple of days. And then, come back and realize like, you're ahead of the game.
Yeah, I think a lot of the NFTs, some people have a problem with it because they said, oh, why would you take something that's abundant and make it arbitrarily scarce, right? Abundance is good. And I do believe that for our essentials in life, abundance is good, right? But a lot of things, if it's not scarce, it loses value, like diamond rings, right? If diamond rings were just all across the ground, you can pick up anywhere you want, like 12 karat or whatever, people wouldn't be proposing with them because it's meaningless, right? They'll have to go find something else that's scarce and hard to find and say, hey, this is what represents my love for you. And so there are, and like you said, access passes that can be like abundant because the conference only fits, this 100, 500 people. So it can't be like, oh, everyone copy and paste, they can come in. And so there needs to be something that values, like I said, people's labor that puts into it, the relationship with the artist, access to a conference, and sometimes the uniqueness. Like let's say you train a battle pad, and the way you train it over the years makes it different from every other battle pad in the past. right? And anyone else has. So that is unique. And you don't want suddenly like everyone just copy and pasting this a million times, and that's just everyone just uses the one you did and no one else's matters. That's kind of awkward. So I think NFT is a good solution for the sense of ownership of value and scarcity in a digital world where not everything is so abundant, it's no longer special and meaningful. And that's something VIVERSE is really pushing too. HTC pushed out one of the first, blockchain focused phones. It's called the Exodus. It was a wallet in a phone. And then with the new VIVERSE, you have your home pod and actually allows you to display your NFTs there, allows people to visit and do interactions like, hey, look, this is a cool NFT, you get to share with each other and experience that. So, and like I said, one of the commercials we did of the pitching of the VIVERSE was going to a museum with the grandma and say, hey, you like this digital art in VR, let me buy it for you. So grandma has this unique piece of digital art, and grandma knows that, hey, you actually spend a bit of your money to do it. So it's because you care, not because you just picked it off the ground like a stone and handed it to her. So I think there's a lot of opportunities there. I think companies are still figuring it out, in terms of how to best do it, how to respect users, how to make it again private and decentralized and open. And I think consumers, like you mentioned, are also figuring out, understanding what's the true use case, what's the value, how much you use it, how to avoid the scams, But I think in the next few years, it will all converge together to the future. And I think it's going to be a better future if we spend time understanding it and crafting together.
Absolutely. And, value is different for everyone, right? Like, some people value things more than others. Like, let's say people who love anime, or specific anime, they want all those figures of that specific anime. I love One Piece. Every time I go in an anime store, all I'm looking for is One Piece stuff. Even though I know there's a bunch of amazing animes out there. But, I just think that NFTs in the right hands, with the creative people, will be able to really play the game and provide a lot of crazy value in unique ways that I don't think anyone can think of. So it'll definitely be really interesting. And another thing too, and I always thought about this when I first heard about NFTs, and maybe it's already a thing, but the idea of owning digital art, and let's just say it's cool, like it's like really awesome, famous artist, and it's not like a picture, it's like a GIF or a moving video or even something you interact with. Mm-hmm. We all have things we hang up on our walls, but I'm willing to bet in the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to have like screens on our walls, like frames. And I know they exist, but you'll be able to just toss up your NFT and flex, or, have a party and put up your crazy monkey JPEG that's famous. But, then you got all these other amazing NFTs. And let's just say that, when the VIVERSE gets bigger and bigger and, creators start creating even more insane projects in the virtual reality space, that you can interact with those NFTs, like pets. Imagine NFT pets that you could interact with I'm just giving out ideas here if anyone wants to take it.
I think people are working on those. Yeah. And I already see, I've seen restaurant owners, they decorate their restaurant with the Bored Ape they own. Because uniquely about the Bored Ape is that you actually own the whole IP of the Bored Ape. And so there are people making animated films based on the Bored Ape they own. So they're already doing this interaction with this NFT. They're doing they're putting up the restaurant and making merchandise shoes with the one unique Bored Ape they own. And so I love that. Yeah, anime, I love One Punch Man. So I actually have this mobile game where I spent over $2,000 on it and owning some of my favorite characters in One Punch in the mobile game. But it's not even an NFT. One day when if the game shuts down or I stop playing, again, I don't even know at that point how much money I'll be spending, but at least for now, $2,000 down the drain. And it'd be cool if I actually have the NFT of these One Punch Man characters that I can have in my wallet. I know even if the game is gone, even if I no longer play the game, I still have, the unique version of my favorite S-class heroes displayed somewhere in my room or whatnot. And people know wow, isn't that, one of the S-class from the game that's no longer around? This is a art, like a relic almost, but it's super rare. I'm impressed, right? That would actually turn a game shutting down from like just a sad, empty experience to like, wow, I got something super meaningful out of it experience.
Absolutely. And, like that, and that makes me just think, I mean, how much money have we all wasted on games and microtransactions and buying things in a game that, once you stop playing it, or once the game was done, that was it, money down the drain. I mean, look, people who hate NFTs, just bear with me for a second. I mean, imagine a future where all the money you put into assets on the internet, like you already do for all your games, for all those weapons or skins or whatever, you can just kind of like throw them in your treasure trove on your phone or whatever on the blockchain. And, in 5-10 years, you're like, hey, I got one of these still, and maybe it's worth like some money. So, there's real opportunity here to, and people still don't seem to understand the concept of digital ownership. I think people still are thinking in Web 2.0, not 3.0, but I think we're going to see that transition real soon. And I'm excited for that future.
Yeah. So both of us, we're here. We're not selling any particular NFTs. We're not scamming people. We're just talking about where the future's at, where the value's at, where the world is headed towards. We're excited about it ourselves. And of course, go do your own research, understand what you're getting into. But we do think in the future, we will see, AR, VR, the metaverse, Web3, blockchain, NFT, all merging together into one world. And we do believe that's still going to be called the metaverse when all of them gets merged together. And we're really excited about that. So hopefully, people explore alternatives like the VIVERSE and see how the VIVERSE wants to have a metaverse that respects its patrons. And, it's not perfect right now, but that's the vision. And through a lot of people's support in the next 1 to 3 years, I think we're going to show more and more about what a metaverse could be like, and, give people options and have this Web3 blockchain way to do this interoperability thing and all that stuff. So, but in the meantime, I'm just so grateful that we get to chat. I really learned a lot from you, and I appreciate your time. Again, everyone who isn't already doing it should go to PapaFearGaming on YouTube, check out his content, see how he's actually being more of himself, right? In terms of just what he chooses not to do, and how he feels like this is his true self. I think that's very important for learning experience, and just think about how everyone in the platform, like everyone who's watching, should also just try to be their true selves in the future world, on YouTube, on social media, in VR, in the metaverse. Just don't constantly behave the way you think people want you to behave, but just be your true self, or be your true self, or be true to yourself, both, and just live your life and create value for the world. So with that said, again, thank you so much for being here, PapaFearGaming, and look forward to having our next chat soon.
Yu-kai, as always, it's a pleasure. It's been great chatting with you, man. And I feel like I've learned a lot from you as well. And it's always good to have these kind of conversations about the metaverse and the VIVERSE. And thank you to HTC Vive for giving me the opportunity to have this great conversation with you, man. So I definitely look forward to having another one with you again soon.
Sounds great. I'll see you then.
All right. I'll see you in the metaverse, the VIVERSE.
I'll see you in the VIVERSE. Yeah.